Thanks for having me, Ben, and to the club, and to the 130 years worth of human capital that's gone into the Adamstown Rosebuds. Thank you very much for having me. I think two things to your answer very quickly, Ben. Longevity in anything is worth acknowledging. And in a football sense, I deeply believe that longevity is worth hanging on to and celebrating and nurturing. And wouldn't it be great, although impossible unless something miraculous happens, to be here and celebrate the 260th anniversary of the Adamstown Rosebuds?
Yeah, that might be difficult even for me.
That's right.
To reach there. Now we're going to talk Australian football, and the biggest thing in Australian football at this point in time is the Matildas. They're playing tomorrow morning against Norway. I just want to get your thoughts on their progress over the last few years and what this match tomorrow means for them.
Well, I mean, it'd be hard to describe what it means for the girls, who are only a matter of hours away now. Like, it's less than 12 hours till kick-off against Norway. And so one could only imagine what's going through their minds as they prepare and what it means to them individually. But what it means to us as a football community supporting them, I think it's fair to say the support is 100% across the board, even outside of the football community. It's often said that the Matildas are in the top couple, if not the number one sporting team in Australia at the moment, as far as popularity is concerned, and the way the girls have conducted themselves, the way they've built their careers individually, and the way they've built this national team over the last number of years. And so they sit now, and particularly the core of the team, it's a great generation that's worked long and hard to get to this point where they expect a lot of themselves, and consequently they've taken us with them in this expectation. And so from here on, it's going to be a very nervous ride. And I don't think I'm speaking out of school to suggest that they haven't hit their own self-appointed heights on field yet. And thankfully, we can still expect that to come, because to get as far as they believe they can, they're going to have to play to their potential. But the Norway game tomorrow morning is going to be very, very difficult, but I deeply believe they'll get through, which will be a minimum requirement, and then we hang on for the ride into the really pointy end of the season, but of the competition. But yeah, the development of women's football, it's women's sport in general, but particularly the Matildas and women's football. I mean, it's been around much longer than the other football codes and their incarnations of their women's leagues and top-tier women's leagues. They're getting a lot more start-up love than our women have had over the decades that they've been playing on the national stage, and that's a little snapshot of the struggle that our game has had in general, indeed probably over 130 years, to climb that level of acceptance. But the Matildas are breaking down a lot of barriers, and the more they win, the easier the fight off the field gets for them, and to be frank, for everybody.
From the Matildas to the NPL, where Adamstown Rosebud are playing in currently, there's so much interest, I feel, in the NPL, even more so now with the FFA Cup as well. And I feel there's a disconnect between people that are... There are people that are interested in the NPL and the A-League, of course, but I feel like there's some people that are really interested in the NPL and don't really care about the A-League. How do we bridge that divide?
Yeah, if we need to. Our sport, unfortunately, is one which can pick a fight where one doesn't exist. And on this matter, as far as I'm concerned, so long as people in the football community are supporting a football club, to me that's the most important thing. Obviously, in theory, it's even better. In practice, it's even better if people can feel their way to supporting a local NPL, and in our case, the Jets. But if people find that they've only got so much tribalism in their heart and it can only go to their local club, then I actually have no problem with that, so long as it doesn't translate into antagonism to the other parties. But the fact of the matter is, clubs are built on passion and commitment, and the people who've put tonight on deserve enormous plaudits, because you can only imagine how much work has gone into nights like tonight. You can only imagine how much work has gone into the 130 years that precede this event tonight, and it just doesn't happen from nothing. And Ray Bartz and Bunny Curran don't come from nothing. They walk into a club, they aspire to play for a club that's been set up by people giving their time so that the next gen Bunny Currans and Ray Bartzes can come in. So whether you're an NPL fanatic or an A-League fanatic, to me, in the bigger picture, is not quite as irrelevant as your commitment to serving a club and getting kids playing, getting kids coached and getting kids passionate about the sport.
The FFA has said during the week that they're keen on getting a second division kicking off in 2021. My question, is that a pipe dream, or do you think it can happen in the next couple of years?
I don't think there's any doubt it can happen. Whether it does or not is going to be determined by a couple of one key element, and that's the money for it. But, you know, there's no reason. Our form of football is the biggest sport in Australia. It represents an enormous number of people. It represents communities that span the entire continent. You know, there's not another football code in Australia that can say that. Aussie rules can't say that they're represented nationwide at grassroots level. Rugby league certainly can't. Rugby union can't. We are the only football code that can actually hand on heart say we have representation all around Australia, to the bottom of Tasmania, right up to the top of Cape York. That encompasses enormous energy in people, enormous opportunity for people to contribute. So it shouldn't be a pipe dream. If people want something to happen in this game, we have the boots on the ground to make it happen. If we can submit to a single plan and argue as one group of people rather than the 30,000 tribes that tend to find reasons to argue at the moment.
And that brings me to my next question. How do you bring all that participation together and build it into interest in the professional leagues? Obviously the A-League and the W League. Sorry to do this to you, but I'm going to say, if you're a doctor and you're checking up on the A-League, how are you rating its health at the moment?
Well, it's how do I answer it in medical terms without being, what are you, a lawyer or what? You're trying to...
Yeah, not quite.
The A-League is, as it must be, as it's obviously going to be, as it always will be. The A-League is a complete representation of the base of the pyramid that supports it. And resilience is the word that comes to mind. So it has done, it's had 2 or 3 very difficult years for political reasons. I mean, guess what happens in Australian football from time to time? Politics becomes the talking point. If the industrial strength fan can be brought to blow the political fog away from the game, then I, as always, have enormous faith that the game is going to prevail, and it'll prevail because it is unbeatably popular. It is unbeatably accessible. It's unbeatably egalitarian. It's unbeatably representative of all our life's issues, all encased in a single game of football. The late Johnny Warren used to talk at large about the atomic appeal of football is that it's everyone's life in a game. It doesn't matter if you're male, female, or anywhere on that spectrum, if you're big, small, capable or incapable. The game is accessible to you and it represents you. And despite sometimes our best efforts, you just cannot stop kids playing. Our job is to make sure we coach those kids properly, actually better say, encourage them to develop properly. And this enormous human capital that we have in this game can prevail, and I believe with just a little bit of luck will prevail.
Now, in talking about trying to develop that interest, free-to-air TV, there's been a lot of talk this week whether Fox Sports are going to continue broadcasting the A-League. But I just want to ask you how important you sense it is for the A-League to have a presence on free-to-air TV. There was one match around this year. How important is it to have more than that? And also the W League as well. Yeah.
So there's 2 answers to that, Ben. The first one is you've got to get people exposed to the game. So where I live on the mid-north coast, we have, I would suggest it's a bit like Adamstown Primary School that Barty referred to on the video, where there was 2 games they played growing up, irrespective of what was going on. They played cricket in summer, soccer in winter. And then you look down at the lake with Michael Bugard and Treads and Craig Johnston. That was another hot spot. The key that I'm saying, up on the mid-north coast, we have little hot spots as well. But if the kids, once they play and have their practice session can't go home and put that game into some sort of context, can't see what the professionals do, then you lose a lot in translation. There's no context for them. And so in general terms, free-to-air television provides you with that ability for people to link to the top end of town and put what they do on a Tuesday afternoon or in the playground at recess into context. They can see what's going on. Very important connection. That's a general answer. More specifically, and I'm not sort of dodging the issue, but the whole media landscape has been so disrupted and will be even disrupted even more from here on in. Whether it's free-to-air or streaming or direct messages on people's phones with highlights packages or whatever, I wouldn't even have a clue where this is going to end up. I dare say a lot of people in the industry as well don't really have an idea, but it gets to the point, the young kids, boys and girls who are starting on this journey of loving the game, what television, whatever that means in the future, provides them is context for what they're doing in the playground. If they don't have access like Bartsy did and Bunny Curran did to the local ground, whether it was Walls End, the Red Devils, the Bluebells or the Rosebuds, whatever, they can see the older guys do it. Now we have media to do that, and it's extraordinarily important that our game maximises that.
Yeah, and it's been incredible working with Bar TV over the last 5 years. I think back when we first started back when I first started getting involved with the NPL, the maximum amount of people that we'd get watching a game at once was probably about 50. Now, for a regular season game, any game, you're looking upwards of 200, 300 people watching at once. It's just incredible. And there is so much interest at this grassroots level as well.
Yeah, and you know, it gets to... there is a part of professional sport that's becoming too corporate for a lot of people. I've got a bit of sympathy for that. And connection with your local club, walking down the street to your local ground, watching the guys and girls you grew up with, watching them play in person or following them through some sort of media, but it's that local connection. You know, in globalised times, globalisation provides great opportunity for corporate entities. And that's the space into which the A-League needs to move unashamedly. However, there's a massive gap between the globalised corporate level of things and the local level. And I think that's a large part of the resurgence of NPL stuff, is that local connection when the whole corporate sport thing seems to have passed a lot of people by, and I've got sympathy for them. And that's the importance of maintaining these century-long connections to community of places like Adamstown Rosebud.